you can get Claude to do SEO tasks, right? But does it understand the context of the business and the strategy that goes into it and the experience that I have working with other clients and all of those strategic layer things of how everything ties together the same? Like, I've had clients share to me like, hey, I had Claude create this SEO strategy for me and I put all these inputs in and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, this is false. That's garbage. That contradicts this thing and that won't work. So even though you see something like, Claude Design or whatever they called it, and you see some of the output, you're like, oh, wow, that's actually really good quality. Or some of the videos that you see, it's like, it can do some of the task stuff, but I don't think it can fully replicate the human. I think it'll be, in most industries and cases, it'll replace some stuff, obviously. But the more skilled craft stuff, I think it's going to be more of a tooling, a thing that we can add, a quiver that we can add to help us become more efficient and improve our workflows and those types of things. But it's scary. Like, you see some of the stuff and you're like, oh my God, that's terrifying.
Today, we're going on a tangent with Jason Faber, an SEO and growth leader who left the corporate tech world to build his own consulting business, and he hasn't looked back. Before that, he was a senior growth marketing lead at Shopify, and over the years, he's built experience across startups, growth stage teams, and consulting roles. What I like about Jason's approach is that he talks about SEO less like a bag of tricks or quick hacks and more like a craft. In this conversation, we get into how search is changing in the age of AI, why traffic doesn't always translate into results, and why SEO often feels slow. We also talk about topic ownership, internal linking, and what it really means to work fractionally as an SEO growth leader. Welcome to Creative Tangent, a podcast by The Booth. I actually found it kind of interesting there what you're saying, because the creative outlet of writing and like having a recipe blog, I think is a little bit different than work, even though it's still like writing, and SEO obviously captures some of that.
Yeah.
But then you were saying like, oh, I should make a newsletter, and then it was like more closely related to work. So I was just curious if like you need or think you'll need a creative outlet that's like not associated in any way with work.
I think so. For me, it's just like finding the time and space for it. I've always admired folks who are creative or people who can like build stuff. Like, I'm not a handy guy. I can't go build a deck. I can barely like hang a picture in my house. So I've always like wanted to kind of have that like hands-on building something kind of thing. And I'm not creative in the sense of like not a designer or like any of that kind of stuff. And I definitely yearn for that type of thing. And I think writing is my most creative outlet that I have. It's just finding space for it. And I feel like I scratch a lot of that itch with being outside and dedicating myself into endurance sports and those sorts of things. But like, yeah, I see people around me who are just like, yeah, building shit with their hands. And I'm like, this is so cool. My buddy, he's between jobs right now. He bought a 3D printer and he started designing and 3D printing little like GO trains and subway cars and like Toronto streetcars for his son, and they like fit on those like Brio tracks. And he's like, every parent that comes over is like, these are amazing, you should sell these. So he just like started a Shopify store, and he's already sold like $3,000 worth of these like little GO trains that he just like 3D prints. And I'm like, dude, that was like your brain onto a computer into a physical product. I wish I could do that. I just like, don't have that in me, but it's so cool.
I mean, sometimes I think that, like, the way you described it there, it almost sounds like it just sort of happened naturally. It wasn't like he was trying to do that, but it went down that path. Yeah.
I think that's where you need to discover these things. Like, not everything needs to be monetized, and like that can really suck the life out of a creative tangent or a personal project or whatever. My wife and I went traveling. We did like a year of travel close to 10 years ago, and we started a blog, another way that I wrote. And I remember I started it up. Someone that I used to work with reached out to me, and she's like, love that you're doing this, but you're kind of approaching it wrong. If you want to monetize and get like affiliate sites and get free stays at hotels, and I'm like, that's not why I'm doing this. Like, I don't want to, like, you don't need to have like a side hustle for everything. People have said that to me too, about like running and marathons and stuff, of like, should you start a blog and become an Instagram influencer and all this stuff? I was like, I feel like that would just like suck the joy out of it. I just want to do the thing. And I actually want to leave my phone at home when I'm gone for an hour and a half and like not be tethered to that thing. So some things find their way into, monetization and like, hey, there's maybe a little side project or a business here, but I think the purest things just like aren't. And that's the stuff that, clearly that's the stuff that you love. You're willing to spend your time and spend money on stuff that isn't necessarily going to have a monetary return.
I do a little bit of woodworking, stuff like that, but I still occasionally I'll film it. I don't know why I do it, but I don't intend to or want to sell anything in that process. I'm just kind of like, I think sort of sharing what I'm working on. And I think it's something a little bit different for people because like you don't always just sort of see that happening, I guess, unless you're into that craft and you search it out on YouTube or whatever, watch somebody do it. The other day, somebody messaged, it was like super flattering. This guy who's in our kind of community, Justin Cohn, he like sent me a quick note and was like, because I was working on an axe, and he was like, I love what you're doing. I'd really like an artifact of your process. You know, do you sell them? And I was like, sort of taken aback. Like, it took me like a day to respond to him because I was like, do I sell them? No, I don't sell them. Do I sell them? And then I finally landed on like, I was like, no, man, I'm like, if you want one, I'll make it for you. I find the axe heads usually like at a garage sale or something.
Yeah.
If I like something about it, I'll try and bring it back to life by making a new handle for it and stuff like that. But that came from filming it. And it's interesting how our brains kind of work, where as soon as it shared out in the world, other people like kind of want to turn it into something for us in a way. So I think it's kind of nice to be able to maybe just keep it your own when you've got so much other work things going on and family stuff.
You're leading it with like authenticity and passion and the love of the craft, and I want to share this with other like-minded people who might find value in this, versus like force feeding like I need to make X amount of sales and money a month. And that's just like kind of like a good lesson on like business and marketing and all of those things too, of just like, you can't just like create something really fast and try to scale it really fast without having that value baked in behind it.
Sometimes it's nice to just shut your brain off and not think about any of that stuff and just kind of be like, this is my thing. Like, do you get like that when you're running? Do you get into like a state of just like, I don't run, so I don't really know what that feels like?
Yeah. Totally. Like, my favorite is when I can leave my phone at home. I bring my phone with me a little bit more now that I have kids, just because like I don't want to be gone for 2 hours and not be reachable and show up at home. And it's like, oh, it's been a shit show here. Like, he broke his arm and he's at the hospital and I've just been out gallivanting in the trails. So, but I do like to disconnect. Sometimes I listen to music or a podcast, but sometimes it's nice to just like have nothing. And you just like, you get in this like flow state, which I'm sure you've heard about. And it's a really hard thing to explain if you haven't experienced it. But I think you probably get into that with different things in life, whether you're listening to an album or you're woodworking or people, on a long drive or whatever it is. And you just sort of like disconnect and get in this flow state, and my mind just like wanders through all the stuff, through all the shit that I have no space to like actually think about and process, because life is just too jam-packed between like focusing on this client and then this client and then it's daycare pickup and then what's for dinner and then it's like bedtime and then you're just like done. So it kind of gives me that space. I started swimming last year. I started moving a bit more from just like pure running into like triathlon world. And one thing I love about swimming is that like you got nothing. Like, your face is in the water. There's no distraction. Like, there's nothing in your ears. You're not looking at a phone. You're not being distracted by other people. Like, you're just like in there. It's almost like this like meditative state once you get past the point of swimming totally sucking, which it totally does at the start. But that's a big part of what I like about some of these endurance sports, is it like it gives you the time and space to tap into that stuff. And also like it's a big mental struggle and it's a grind. Like, you almost need to get into this, like, put on the blinders and just like nail down and just like try to go for a long time, fast, but not too fast. And that's where I think about all the stuff that I have no space to think about otherwise.
Oh, it's amazing. Learning to swim as an adult is hard too. Like, I know everybody kind of knows how to swim, but like actually being like, I'm going to do lane swim, that's a whole different thing.
It's very intimidating and very frustrating, and will make you feel so unathletic as an athlete. I didn't grow up swimming. My version of swimming before I like learned how to swim was like, I can jump in the lake at the cottage and bob around for 30 seconds, then get out and have a beer. Like, I can survive in the water, but like I never swam laps before or gone to a pool or any of that. So massive learning curve for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it here a little bit. So I think maybe a good place to start is kind of just describing what that means. Like, what is a fractional SEO consultant?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. Most companies that I work with have either worked with SEO in other capacities. So either they've had an agency that they've been working with for a couple of years, or they've been working with a freelancer. Sometimes they've had someone in-house, but not very often has it become that important of a craft yet that they've had someone in-house and then they've scaled back to the fractional side of things. But really, from my perspective, it's you get the strategy and the leadership of someone who's experienced. So more so than a freelancer who's a bit more of like a, hey, give me the strategy and the list of tasks and I will check off all of the boxes. I will, create all the links. I'll write the meta descriptions. I'll write the content. Freelancers are very checkbox type focused folks. Fractional is more of that strategy, that leadership. You own the function from start to finish, just on a fractional or a part-time basis. So for a lot of my clients, I'm essentially their part-time SEO lead or head of SEO, just not a full-time employee where they have to pay a full salary and laptop and benefits and all of the stuff. I'm embedded directly within the team, so I'm part of weekly meetings or status meetings, all hands sometimes in Slack groups. So I'm able to be embedded, be part of conversations and decisions, collaborate cross-functionally with other teams, but far enough away that you're not, full-time seat at the table. So I often say like a freelancer is like outside the room. A fractional person, whether you're fractional SEO or design or head of marketing or whatever the craft is, you have a seat at the table. And with that, you can drive strategy, you can help drive execution, sometimes hands on yourself. Sometimes, I help hire in writers and work with designers and stuff, but you're also responsible for the outcomes of that side of the business, which puts a little bit more of the onus and pressure on you as well. So most of the time my clients are sort of looking for someone to come in and own that function top to bottom and be accountable for those results.
And an agency is doing some SEO, but then they're also doing a whole bunch of other things, I guess.
Yeah. So agencies typically fall into one of two buckets. There's the we are an SEO agency. This is what we do. And there's more and more of those popping up. A lot of the times the challenges with agencies, there's a couple different challenges that I hear from agencies. And a lot of my clients come to me after having worked with an agency. And I say this with a big asterisk of there are amazing SEO agencies out there. But the common thing that I hear is overpriced. They're paying 25K a month for this agency. They're on a 12-month contract that they can't get out of without paying some crazy fee or just waiting it out. The agency's over there. They're not embedded into the team the same way that I get embedded within the team. There's usually some, really smart person who's, sort of heading up the agency, who's selling them on the idea. But the execution itself is actually going to more of a freelancer type person, either someone really junior, someone overseas, someone that's behind the scenes that the client doesn't necessarily know who they are. And a lot of agencies focus on output and volume. We created 20 articles. We bought 500 backlinks. We did this massive amount of stuff and it's just templated and it's just the same stuff every single month and it's just a production factory. And that obviously doesn't drive very good results in 99% of the cases. The best agencies kind of operate a little bit more like a fractional where they're more embedded with the team. You're working directly with the CMO or whoever that decision maker is. But most of the time, when I start working with a new client and they've had a bad agency relationships, we didn't even know what they were working on. We'd ask them questions, we'd get ghosted for 3 days. And it's just so opposite of the way that I operate. If a client slacks me, I'm not letting that get to the next day. I'm usually answering them within the hour. But if I'm particularly busy or if all my clients are coming at me at once, they feel like I'm a full-time employee without being a full-time employee and that they're my number one client. And then half the cost or whatever of an agency at times.
When does an agency, when does a company go I actually need someone to focus on SEO? Is there a tipping point or a moment or a couple of signs or things like that where they're okay, this is something that we need someone on, maybe not full time, but a focused person on this?
Usually depends on so many things. Depends on the industry, depends on the company size, the maturation of that company. I work with a lot of earlier stage startups, but I also work with some enterprise companies who have grown without SEO or SEO is just kind of happened by committee. And then they've realized hey, there's actually a channel or a growing channel here, expanding beyond, just classic search and into LLMs and AI visibility and all this stuff. Yeah. We need someone to own this and manage this because it's sort of just been floating around between marketing and product and engineering. On the earlier stage side of things, some startups are too early stage, I think, to invest in SEO. If you don't have product market fit and you don't quite know who your ICP is, you can test some SEO stuff to validate some learnings, but it's probably not the best channel for you at that point in time because SEO takes such a ongoing, longer term compounding investment. If you're constantly shifting what your positioning is and who your ICP is, and oh, actually our product was this, but now it's this over here. That's a really hard thing to just flip a switch and change from an SEO perspective. Whereas if you're running ads, whether it's like Meta ads or Google ads, you can flip those on and off, you turn of a switch. You need 1,000 visitors tomorrow. You can pay Google to send you 1,000 visitors tomorrow with Google ads. It's a really great way to validate your messaging or conversion funnel or certain keywords before you start investing in SEO. So really depends on where you are in that journey. Most of my clients, they have that product market fit. They have their ICPs. They maybe have like a jobs to be done framework where they really understand the core challenges of their customers and how the product solves it. They just haven't been able to match those things together. And they see SEO and organic as an actual growth channel. Maybe they don't quite have the budget to spend continuously on paid, because paid is, everything's getting more expensive in the world, but paid's getting more expensive. And they want something that they can build a foundation and a moat around their growth engine in a longer term basis. And I've told clients this before in intro calls where they're like, we want to spend 10K a month on SEO and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm like, you guys aren't ready for SEO. Like, you can hire me. We can do this for 3 to 6 months, but it might not work out because you're just not quite at that stage yet.
When they're like making an investment in building up the website or something like that, is that a good moment to kind of look at how things are structured?
Earlier the better is good, because then you can bake SEO foundations in from day one. So if I started working with a client that is, let's just say the company's 3 years old and maybe they've done some random SEO here and there. Maybe they had an agency at one point. The website has kind of grown and scaled over time. When I jump into that client, more often than not, it's a rat's nest of stuff, right? There's a ton of technical and SEO debt that we need to undo or fix to reset foundations before we can then start to build and scale. That's normal, but that again, takes up some of your bandwidth of just doing that cleaning up of the house kind of stuff before you can start to top things up. So that's part of the challenge. But again, starting too soon with some brands just totally doesn't make sense. If a client's building a new website, that's often an inflection point, right? When someone comes to me, it's either we're relaunching, we're rebranding, or we're relaunching a website, we're changing domains, we're moving from WordPress to Webflow, or there's a new CMO or a new VP who's come in and either decided that they need to invest in SEO or they haven't before, or they've fired an agency or a freelancer and they're looking for someone more experienced and strategic. So there's sort of these tipping points where it happens. But SEO is about so much more than just keywords and content. And that's one of the challenges with clients, is to get them to involve you in more of the stuff that's going on internally and saying, use me with more projects and more of my time, even though that kind of hurts my own scope creep a little bit, but it all impacts the outcomes of SEO. And this is becoming increasingly true in the world of LLMs and AI visibility. It's such a cross-functional craft now. It's wild.
Maybe a good way into that's actually that recent article you posted about how Google has now officially depreciated the FAQ results. I was reading through that article. You did say something that was kind of interesting to me, which was that FAQs are a format, not a strategy. And it kind of just got me thinking about where I think maybe a lot of people come into this with these thoughts of, I need to own a keyword, because people are going to search for that thing. I was okay, that's not a strategy. Owning a keyword is probably not a strategy. I was just curious, how are you thinking about how to position SEO now for a company?
It's hard, right? Because the old world of SEO was pick your keywords. Yeah. Sometimes it was 10 or 15 keywords. Find the high volumes or the high search volume, the keywords that people are searching the most that have low competition. Not many other websites are competing on them. And write content or create pages to capture that content, and we will rank number one. And because we rank number one, we'll get all the clicks and we'll get all this traffic, and yay, everyone pat ourselves in the back. We've done a good job. We've done the SEO thing. I think inherently a lot of people knew that wasn't really the best way to approach things for a long time, but seeing number one rankings and seeing organic traffic go up, those were the North Stars that were just foundational for such a long time. And with the advent of LLMs and especially Google AI overviews, which now exists in not every search result, but think about your own Google search history. They're there all the time and increasingly now. That's caused what's called zero-click searches, which is someone does a search, they get the answer they need, and they don't click through to any website. And this has caused so many websites, their traffic to go down, especially for more like top of funnel informational keywords. So a lot of clients are sort of like running around their hair on fire saying like, our traffic is down. What do we do? And when we start to peel back the layers on like, what does that actually mean? What kind of traffic is down? Is it impacting our conversions or our demo requests? And more often than not, no. Like I have some clients who lost 30% of their traffic, and most of it was from very informational blog content. Like what is X? Like definitional stuff that it's easy for a Google AI overview to just scrape and just put in the answer. And even though we rank number 4, we're not getting any clicks, has no impact on our actual bottom line. So it sort of brings up this question of, okay, is traffic the number one thing we should be looking at? In some cases, yes. Like if you're a publisher and you rely on ad revenue, you rely on eyeballs. So you rely on clicks. So like, yeah, traffic for a publisher is really important. But if you're maybe like an e-com brand or a B2B SaaS brand, like it might not be nearly as important. And, you know, that example kind of just showcases you of like, yeah, traffic's down 30%, but demo requests are up 5%. Like, that maybe that traffic never really mattered. Does that mean we shouldn't write that content? It depends. Some of those topics are just so oversaturated. Are you just writing the same thing that everyone else is writing? But if it helps you build up your topical authority around a space and there's a reason for it to exist on your website that serves a purpose more than just the 1,000 visits you were getting a month previously, maybe it should exist. So a lot of what we're focusing on with my clients from an SEO and AEO perspective is, how can we be the trusted source and answer for someone wherever they're searching? And how do we remove ourselves from pure traffic numbers and reframe how we think about what success potentially looks like? And a lot of the stuff we're doing now is moving away from that top of funnel stuff that's just never really mattered for a lot of the brands and that we're not getting a lot of the traffic for, and focusing a lot more on specific use cases or industries, like bottom of funnel, mid to bottom of funnel type content. So it's not just best XYZ software. It's like, what's the best XYZ software for a product manager in fintech? So getting a little bit more granular, because the way people are searching is not only getting more long tail, but when you look at how people use LLMs, when you go to Claude or ChatGPT, you start with one prompt. It's usually like short question. Sometimes it's maybe a bigger question, but then you have follow-ups. Like you add these like additive statements in the follow-up prompts. And the thing I say with a lot of my clients is, how are we answering those next 10 questions that someone has? Whether it's about, you know, is there compliance, or is it open source, or how does it compare to these two platforms over here, or whatever it might be. And if we don't have that content, where's the LLM getting that information from? So we're going a lot more long tail, bottom of funnel, specific use case. Can we solve and answer every question that our potential prospect has? Even if that means that we get less traffic, ideally the traffic and the eyeballs that we are getting in front of are far more qualified.
So how does that become like a strategy where they own, they're trying to own a topic versus a keyword? Is that the idea?
Yeah, in some cases that's the way that it operates in a lot of cases. So there's a couple different things here. There's the classic keyword research that I was explaining earlier of like, look up the keyword, what's the highest volume, whatever. If you look at a given, and the old way of SEO was really like you pick one target keyword and you use that's your target keyword for the page. Don't try to have a page target too many keywords. And if you're targeting this page, you can't target it over here because you're going to cannibalize yourself. And that was true for very, very long. And then we started to get to this world where it was like, hey, this blog post ranks for like 50 keywords. That's incredible. And that number, if you're writing really good, in-depth, helpful content, has started to expand because you're able to not only cover more topics within a particular blog post, but also the way that people search has changed so much that there's many different variations of a given keyword. Like no two keywords are really alike anymore. So what you can start to do.
What you mean by that is essentially you can't guess at what someone is really going to type in as a phrase. Right?
Yeah, so I'll use an example from a client of mine that was in that blog post that I think you're referring to. They're an emergency vet clinic. They do 24-hour emergency vet services. They have 120 plus locations across the US. So their like top keyword is emergency vet near me. That's like the money number one keyword. But if you break that down and you look at our keyword data, on the page that we rank for that, we have 1,500 keywords that rank on that page, and 650 of them or something like that are top 3 or top 10 keywords. And they're all just variations of emergency vet near me, pet hospital near me, dog hospital open overnight, 24. Like you can think of every single combination and permutation of that. And because we've built up so much topical authority, not just with that page, but with all of our surrounding blog content around every single emergency issue you can think about with a dog or a cat or a ferret or whatever pet, that all point back to that main landing page that we have. We essentially own that entire topic, so that when there is some sort of emergency vet keyword that comes up, we rank really well because Google just knows and trusts us as, oh, these guys do emergency vet services. And when, maybe they're targeting 24 hours as a qualifier, but when someone says overnight or on holidays or early Sunday mornings or whatever, semantically, Google understands that that's what we do. We don't have to actually physically target all of those keywords for us to necessarily rank for some of those things. So that's an example of where we've gone beyond thinking very finite of here's this one keyword. We kind of use that as our anchor, but we think about how do we own the entire topic and where do we have deficiencies within that topic that we can help fill in, whether it's specific types of pets or locations or whatever, that we can sort of invest more content in to help point some of that back to that root page.
There's something else you said about top of funnel versus bottom of funnel keywords. And we talk about that with video work, but I had never thought about that with SEO content. That's super. Is that something that LLMs have specifically changed, or has that always existed?
I would say it's always existed, but LLMs and AI overviews have pulled the curtains back on it a lot. So this stuff has always existed. It's been part of the SEO funnel for a long time. But what the LLMs have really started to show us was that we talked about earlier, a lot of that content doesn't convert, doesn't really matter. Is it part of the buying journey? Maybe, but do we need traffic to the website to influence that? And the higher up in the funnel you go, the easier it is for an LLM to summarize that on your behalf. So you're not going to get a click most of the times. If you're typing in, what is a CRM? HubSpot's going to have great content and all this stuff, but the AI overview is going to tell you what a CRM is. You don't need to click through to the HubSpot article anymore. The other challenge with that is that a lot of that traffic is not very qualified in terms of someone who's going to become a customer anytime soon or maybe ever. So example, I have a client that does their B2B software platform that does experimentation and feature flagging software, but specifically for engineers, data scientists, product managers, a very technical audience. So if we had content or we had an article that was what is A/B testing? Well, is the enterprise technical buyer that's going to buy A/B testing and experimentation and feature flagging software Googling what is A/B testing, right? That's probably maybe a stats high school student or it could be, but it could be all these other things that we maybe don't know. So while the quantity of the traffic might go up, the quality thins out really fast. We also don't target marketers in any kind of way. That's just not our ICP. So anything that brings in someone that might be a better fit for an Optimizely or a tool that's built for marketers, it's just not a good fit for us. So do we have that content? Yes, we have an ultimate guide on A/B testing, and we answer those questions along with a bunch of other ones because we want to build up our authority around that and then narrow down our niche with other content. But we're not going to get most of the traffic that comes to the top funnel of that kind of stuff is not going to convert.
That's interesting. So the, what do you call it? The dark search or whatever, it's actually revealed something about the way people are buying, I guess, or interacting with the website with intent to buy. That's kind of cool because in a way, it's a completely mysterious feeling search that people are, I think, having difficulty tracking. But then at the same time, it's kind of uncovered this whole massive amount of effort that's being put into creating content around something that doesn't actually impact the bottom line of the business, or maybe, not necessarily directly bottom line, but higher intent signups or demos or things like that, which is kind of neat. It's for the most part hidden, but it uncovered this. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. And again, depends on the industry, right? And depends on the sales cycle. If you're buying enterprise software, you're probably doing a lot of research, right? And you're maybe going to Claude and you're saying, I'm looking for A/B testing software and I have this qualifier and that qualifier, and you follow up and you do all this research and you do all these prompts and you start comparing, okay, here's the 3 platforms that I think are most important to me. I care about SOC 2 compliance. Okay, here's the 2. And then when you go to make your buying decision, what do? You're probably not clicking a link in ChatGPT or in Claude to then go and sign up.
Google probably.
Go back to Google. You're typing in the brand name directly, and this is what I'm seeing across my whole client portfolio: is top of funnel searches for the what is X. That traffic's down, And where we're seeing a huge influx of SEO traffic is on branded search, because the research and the discovery is happening over here in the LLM. And then the final conversion point is happening, type in brand name here, go to the pricing page, book a demo, whatever it might be, which just creates this massive dark SEO funnel, the same way that, the social funnel has been dark for so long. Of like, we're putting in all these inputs over here. How do we measure the impact of social media on all this stuff? It makes it so hard to measure. But, we know that we're getting, the influx of branded traffic on this side. That's one thing that we've noticed happening a lot, is that branded traffic is spiking because of that buying journey. Versus if you're looking for a new pair of shoes and you're like, I know that I like the Nike Pegasus size 12 men's, and you're typing in that product, you're probably just looking to buy right now. Are you using an LLM for that? Probably not. You're using an LLM to say like, hey, what kind of running shoes should I use if I'm 45 and new to running and have a high arch and whatever, to help you sort of get that discovery side of things. But if you know what you want and you need to go to the website to make the purchase and the conversion, that's happening a lot more. So I'm seeing that with my e-com clients, is like the product specific, like product aware folks are coming through and they're converting. But the B2B SaaS enterprise stuff, like there's such a dissonance between those two, where there's a lot of activity happening over here in the LLMs, and we don't have that correlation between, what's happening there. Like we know how we're being cited and mentioned in our share of voice, but we can't do the direct attribution, which is challenging for a lot of CMOs. They get it, but it's more so challenging for them to explain to their board, because they can't say, I put X number of dollars in SEO and I got this much out the other side.
Man, you're like you're a detective when it comes to this. Speaking of that measurement stuff, like how do you start thinking about it then if so much of the search happens in that dark funnel?
Some clients, rankings and traffic do matter. And some clients, they still want to know that even as leading indicators. So saying like, are we making traction on the types of keywords that we want to be found for, and those types of things. So we still do report on rankings and traffic with a lot of my clients. In most cases, it's not the North Star metric that we're looking at. Most reliably, the more that we can tie SEO efforts to conversions, whether that's an e-com sale, a demo request, an MQL, whatever it is, the better. A lot of clients don't have the measurement capabilities to do that. And as we just talked about, a lot of the research is happening over here, and then the branded traffic comes in over here. So looking at branded conversions is one way that we're trying to do it. I'm recommending, and a lot of folks are recommending this, it's a little bit of like an old school tactic. It sounds kind of funny, but like, just having self-attribution on like a demo request form or whatever, like, how did you hear about us? And you see this a lot still in e-com after you've made a purchase. How did you hear about us? LinkedIn, Twitter, Google search, LLM, whatever. It's a really like low effort thing to put in. Most people will fill it out, and it's the most reliable way to get some sort of feedback loop of like, how did this person hear about us? But in most cases, folks have heard about you from multiple different spots. Like, how often do you buy something, especially B2B software, when you've just discovered it that same day? There's multiple, maybe I saw them on social, or they have a store down the road, or my buddy that works in this industry has mentioned them and I've heard they have a good reputation. It's all these factors that play into it. But yeah, it's making it pretty hard. But with my clients, we look at rankings on keywords that we care about most, and, where are we sitting and how are we moving up or down within that. Organic traffic, slicing it by branded traffic, looking at product pages and demo request pages specifically, self-attribution or organic revenue if we have that. And then on the LLM side of things, there's different LLM visibility and AEO tools that are out there. There's like hundreds of them. I've been using a specific one with some of my clients, and the three metrics we look at the most are share of voice. So how are we showing up compared to our named competitors on the prompts that we want to track? What percentage of the conversation do we own versus them? Mention rate. How often are we being mentioned in the prompts that we're tracking? And then citation rate is how often is our content being cited? Is our domain being shown with a link when there's a response in an LLM? And it's really hard because LLM visibility and prompt tracking is a bit of a weird reporting mechanism that's just so different from classic SEO reporting. Classic SEO reporting is like, show me all the keywords I rank for, right? And the SEO tool will just tell you rank for these 4,000 keywords and these are the exact positions. Prompt tracking and LLM visibility won't do, you can't say, show me all of the prompts where I have an answer. You have to give the tool, here are the 40 prompts that I want to track against one of these 8 LLMs, pick and choose whichever ones you want to track against. How do I show up in those? So it's a little bit like you're choosing to, like, you're saying, these are the ones I think I should show up in and tell me if I am or not. And there's no rankings within there either. Like, you can look at positions of like, are you mentioned first, second, third, or fourth within everyone that's mentioned, but it's so different than the classic like 10 blue links in Google and we rank number one for our money keyword. It's turning all of it upside down on its head. And with a lot of the LLM stuff, it's where do we think we should be? Like, what prompts do we think we should be owning for sure? And are we owning them? And then what are some of the like more competitive or aspirational ones that we want to just, where are we at? Are we at 20% share of voice? Are we at 50%? And tracking that over time, tracking movement over time. What are our competitors doing? Are we executing on certain strategies or tactics that we hope to move that needle? And are we able to move that needle? But it's made it all so complicated, I will say.
Just a quick pause to say thanks for listening to Creative Tangent, a podcast by The Booth. We help marketers put strategy in motion through animation and video designed to make complex ideas easier to understand and remember. That often means supporting video content with fresh creative ideas across the whole customer journey, from launching consideration to onboarding and post-purchase. If that sounds like the kind of work you need, you can find us at bythebooth.com. Okay, now back to the conversation. So we're calling them prompts now when we're inside an LLM, but are those still things that like you think, like you just go through and go, okay, my customers are asking these types of questions and those are the prompts that we're trying to rank for? Is that still the same sort of approach as with more traditional, like an SEO approach of like, what are our customers searching for? What are our customers thinking about? Can we answer those questions? Is that still kind of the same thing?
Yeah. What are the problems that our ICP has where we are the answer, then trying to solve a specific problem? How are they searching for like us versus our competition? So like more bottom of funnel comparison stuff or alternative type content, and really getting inside the brain of your ICP and trying to figure out what are the things that they would ask along that decision journey from early on in the journey to that consideration phase to like right at the end. And the way that a lot of the prompt tracking works, like if you think no two keywords are alike and like every day there's so many million keywords that are searched that Google has never seen before, like the numbers are astounding. Has anyone ever searched the same prompt before? Like, yeah, they have, but like think about how different, like if you got 100 people in the room and you gave them a topic to say like, hey, ask an LLM whatever the question is around this topic, you'd get 100 different prompts. So that's where prompt tracking is also really tough because there's just so many different variations and permutations of what that looks like, especially now as like more personalization is happening in LLMs. And if you asked a question today and I asked the exact same question, we were both on Claude right now, it'd give us different answers because it knows that we listen to different music and we live in different parts of the city and whatever those types of things are. But the way that a lot of the prompt tracking works is it uses fan out queries. So you put in a prompt and it basically creates 3 to 5 other related prompts that are similar but different to try to simulate how an LLM would work to go fetch that information from around the web. The prompt tracking is more directional than being like so specific that we used to have in SEO where it's we rank number one for this money keyword. It's more so directional in terms of like, hey, for this grouping of prompts that we have across these various different topics that we know matter for our business, here's kind of how we show it. It's much more of like what's the test of the wind to kind of give us a sense of that. And it's not hard numbers and specific things.
It's so true because like the LLMs are so positive in any direction you kind of lean. Yeah. So like the way you ask the question can also determine the type of answer it's going to give you, right? Because it'll just be like, oh yes, I agree with you in that direction too.
Well, and even just think like if you and I were both looking for like, what are the best noise canceling headphones for working from home, right? Like pretty detailed prompt. What you would get as someone who also runs a podcast and you're working with video and you probably care about the quality of audio a little bit more in the craft of your work versus me who probably needs to like, I don't know, have headphones that play really good, chill beats so I can get in the zone and like block out the noise of my kids or whatever when I'm working.
Yeah. Or when you're running, they don't fall out of your ears.
Exactly. Right. Or like maybe you listen to grunge and I listen to whatever, right? Like it's going to be a totally different answer and give you different recommendations around that kind of stuff. And that's where from like an SEO strategy perspective, like understanding who your buyer is is and what they care about, and then making sure that you're crafting content to help solve those problems and answer those questions, and that brings expertise and authority and trust and uniqueness to it. That's really where I think a lot of the successful brands are going to go from an SEO, AEO, GEO perspective, is deeply understanding the problems and use cases that your user has and solving those exactly. And again, if you're going to start creating much more content, that each piece of content is going to get less and less traffic because it's so specific. But the idea is that the relevance and the quality of the folks that you're going to get is going to be so much better, because all of a sudden I've given you a great recommendation on specifically how my headphones solve your exact problem in your use case. And you have to be picky and choosy because you only have so much resources, right? You can't create every single, long tail piece of content that exists. But the idea is, how can we represent our product or our service or our brand through every lens that is important to our ICP, so that they have the context and the answers that they might need when making a decision.
Do you think that I'm not sure if this is the right terminology, but like the idea of like generative content for the site, is that something that you think is going to start happening more and more, so that these like specific style searches are going to be able to be accommodated for at scale?
It's been happening at an incredible rate for a while now, whether it's just brands using just ChatGPT and just saying like, create me 100 articles that focus on these 100 use cases, really shitty content most of the time. Or there's people using more AI assisted workflows or whatever it might be. But AI content is absolutely on the rise. Google says that they don't necessarily care if AI is used in the content production. What they care about is the content unique and valuable and in-depth enough and solves the need of the user. But you see all these case studies of these SEOs who have like, we just published 3,000 articles using Claude plugin with whatever, and their traffic goes up, and then they just have this massive tank because Google realizes, oh, it's full of hallucinations and it's thin content and it's not well linked together, and there's no actual like expertise or authority behind this. The way that I see it working really well, because like I said, a lot of brands in the past, they'd create 4 to 10 blog posts a month, maybe, right? And you have a full content team and all this stuff. Using AI as part of the workflow for content creation is definitely something that I think a lot of teams need to be doing more of. But there always needs to be a human in the loop. So the ones that are failing are the ones that are saying, here's my target keyword, write me a piece of content for it, and it just auto publishes. I think that's just a losing strategy out of the gate. But the ones that are using AI, that are providing high quality input and strategy and asking AI to do some of the workload for it. So like when I create my content briefs for clients, I do a good amount of research on keyword research. I Google the terms and the types of terms we're looking for. I look at what does the search result look like? Is there an AO overview? How is the AO overview structuring the content? Who are the competitors? What kind of content do they have? Is it all long form or is it product pages? And I take all these inputs and I have a Claude project that I work on that helps me create a content brief that I then review and pass off to my clients. But for me to like hand write that content brief would take me, I don't know, a couple hours, whereas like Claude can get that done in a minute based off of all my inputs. And then what I see a lot of teams doing is having AI assisted content with human in the loop for the actual content itself. So some teams, they'll have a Claude project that has their voice and tone docs in there. It has their top performing blog posts. It has, all of their keyword data, all of the stuff. It writes a draft of the blog post, and then a writer comes in, tightens it up and reworks some stuff, but it gets you 80% of the way there. That's a really great way, if done properly, to scale up content. But what you're describing has been happening a lot, and Google's been just destroying the websites left, right, and center. And it's impacting the whole industry, because if you think about it, like every single day, there's millions more pages for Google to crawl, because there's all this new AI generated content and these websites publishing 10,000 pages a day. So the amount of time and energy and resources and budget that Google has to crawl these websites is all of a sudden been spread super thin. So what I'm seeing with a lot of my clients is like, you used to be able to create a piece of content and the next day or even same day it was indexed by Google. And I've had clients who like, they've written really good content in sections of their website that Google's just refusing to crawl and index because the quality bar is just so much higher, and every piece of content that they have to crawl costs them money, because they have to send their robots to go crawl everything. So the barrier to entry to even get indexed in Google is so much higher than it used to be. And yeah, and we're just starting to see them crack down on all of this stuff constantly, just through the guise of, is it helpful content that a real reader would read and it answers their question? Like, how many times do you click on an article because you're like, oh, this sounds promising, and you read it and you're like, what the heck did I just read? That was just so surface level and I just wasted my time. That's the shit that Google's going after.
I have a little question about that. Because that's happening to Google, can you still go in and request it to crawl a specific page? Is that what you then have to do now?
Yes, you can do that. A lot of the times that alone won't work. You'd have to make some sort of updates. I would rarely recommend a client just hit that request indexing button if they haven't made any changes to a page that Google has crawled and not indexed, or they've discovered and not indexed. Most of the time, the reason why it's not indexed is either, this could be so many things, but the content is thin or poor quality. Maybe your site has performance issues and Google's looking at it and saying like, hey, we think this site's going to time out and it's going to crash, so we're not even going to bother because that's going to impact us. Lack of internal linking. If you don't have links on your site pointing to a new section of your site or a new piece of content, then why would Google think that it's important even if it's in your sitemap? Internal links not only provide more pathways for Google to find your content, but they act as authority signals. So I have a client that's working on a project where they're testing out new content types and they've kind of like hidden it off in a subfolder that's sort of like buried in the footer of their site. And we're like, let's just see if this can start to rank and everything. And Google's not even indexing it. And I'm like, we have one little link that exists in the footer. We need to start pointing more love to this thing to show Google like, hey, we think this is really good. We're sending our users from that blog post to this thing. Even though we have good content and good domain authority and other stuff ranks, Google's just like, we see this, we ain't touching it.
When you were telling us about that, what I thought was kind of interesting is Google's business is largely search, right? So they can make these decisions, and they do make decisions about like, hey, this is what's going to, this is what we're going to start trusting, and this is what we're going to assume the page has authority, et cetera, et cetera. People jump on that bandwagon, they start creating stuff, and they're making really good content. But then there's other people who maybe start abusing that, and then like your recent article about the FAQs, Google then says, okay, this is not something that we're going to continue to support because people are abusing it. On the other hand, though, the LLMs, I don't think their primary business is search. So when you're getting answers from the LLMs, they could be based on this generated content, right? But if that's the place where you can't see what's happening, right? And that's where people are doing all of their bulk of their research, but then they're coming back to Google and actually doing like a search on the brand, then it's like all these decisions that Google's making about what is quality content or what is useful content sort of in a way no longer matters. It's actually like what the LLMs are deciding, is this good or not? And because their business isn't the same, do they care as much about whether or not the pages that they're indexing, I guess, are useful?
That's a really good point. I would say yes. What is Google's core promise to users? Like, why do people go to Google? Because you go there so you get the best answer to your question. So the more that the content that is being ranked and showing up is shit content, that is thin, that isn't answering a question, Google hates that, right? And that's the basic tenet of the algorithm is like, if you have the best content on whatever the keyword topic is, we will rank you number one. Google also doesn't really want to send free traffic to websites. There's this whole industry called SEO and all this stuff that's basically built around Google's product, and like Bing exists and whatever. But Google really wants you, the user, to click on an ad so they get ad revenue. And we're seeing this more and more on the search result page of like, how can we limit the number of organic clicks that are going out by showing an AI overview where you get your answer and you're getting value, by showing FAQs showing up or people also ask, or embedding a video, and all those types of things, because they want the ad revenue. But they can only get the ad revenue if people keep going back to Google. So that's why there's this quality bar of saying like, Google is the place I go to get answers to my questions. LLMs are trying to do the same thing, but just in a very different mechanism of they want someone to go to Claude to do their research and get their question answered and all that kind of stuff. The more that there's hallucinations, or the more that Claude puts a bunch of M dashes in your content, or basically doesn't do a good job at solving the users, like the actual user's need who's using Claude, the less people are going to use Claude, and they're going to move over to Perplexity, or they're going to move over to ChatGPT and start spending their money there. And the way that they monetize right now is on paid plans, and there's ads that are coming soon. So I would say that they do care about the quality of the content that they're scraping and citing and referencing, because they want to make sure that whatever their output is accurate and not hallucinated and high quality and all of those things. But how that's evolved, like it changes every day and every week, it seems. But essentially, how do you become the go-to place for someone to do their research and find answers to their questions? Typical search engine, is it an LLM? And I wouldn't be surprised if before we know it, the interface of Google is operating, it just becomes AI mode. And we no longer see the 10 blue links that we do today of like ranking positions. Like AI overviews is taking over, and you do, and all of a sudden you're in AI mode, and you're basically in an LLM at that point, and it's a whole new world.
Until you said that thing about Claude and ads, I didn't realize, but it's true. It's like one of the only places you can exist right now on the internet where you're not being shoved ads in your face. So to know they're coming, it's kind of a bummer.
And like with anything else, Netflix or whatever, Spotify, it's like, you don't want ads? Then pay the monthly subscription, right? We pay for everything on the internet one way or the other. You either pay with ads or you pay with subscribing to the content.
I was hoping that the whole world of AI would come up with a better monetization system than serving ads, but I guess not.
Yeah.
So you mentioned internal links. I actually think those are kind of interesting because it sounds like maybe something that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, big time. Internal linking is one of the most important SEO tactics, I'll call it. But it's also, if you look at it so we talk about like, there's 1,000 things you can do in SEO, right? And like, this is where a lot of SEO teams get things wrong, is they try to do everything and they just check a bunch of boxes. And it's not that the stuff that they're doing isn't actually important stuff for SEO, is that they're focused on the wrong stuff that is not going to get them the most bang for their buck. And a lot of the clients I work with, well, they've hired me because they don't have a full SEO team of 20 people where there's like 4 people here that are focused on this one corner of SEO and another 5 people over here. So they need to be a bit more focused and ruthless with prioritization and figure out like, what do we do first, second, third, and fourth? And what do we say, yeah, that's important, but not top of mind right now? And invariably, like, internal linking is one of those things where the impact that you can get out of it is on the high end of a scale, and the amount of effort to do it is low. It doesn't require a developer. It doesn't require months of time and research and resource building and all this stuff. Anybody that has access to the CMS can add an internal link. Knowing how and where and when to do it is important, but it's one of the most underutilized aspects of SEO, where you can get, like I said, like massive bang for your buck. And it's oftentimes amongst those quick wins that I work on initially with a client, but then is like ongoing, especially as you're creating new content, something that I'm like drilling into clients of like, we need to do this with every new piece of content that we build, is building internal links.
So you make a new piece of content, you don't just publish that and like hope Google finds it, basically.
Yeah, essentially. Google crawls your site using 2 things. There's your sitemap, which is like, here's the map of your site and the structure. And they say, okay, here's the homepage, here's the 5 parent pages, and then below that. So they get a sense of, this is what the website looks like. Links is actually how Google crawls through your site. So they follow links to get to all the different pages on your site. So those are like the roads. If you only have one road to your most important piece of content, there's only one way for Google to get there. If you have 40 roads from various other important pages that point to that most important piece of content, Google's going to get there a hell of a lot faster, and they're going to get there a lot more often. And they're going to say, this website has 40 roads pointing to this. They must think that this is really, really important. So having that like intricate network of links improves your crawl efficiency of the site. So Google will find your content more often. They'll put more weight on that type of content. So that's like the theory behind it. When you create a new piece of content, let's just say you publish a new blog post and you didn't link to it from anywhere, you didn't add any internal links. Only way that Google's going to get to that piece of content is going like homepage, they find blog in your main nav, and then there's one link there. So you're 2 links deep, and there's only one way to get there. When I create new blog content, just as an example with a client, we'll not only add internal links from that new piece of content to other existing pieces of content. So let's just say there's 3 links to different product pages because we mentioned the products that we have in that blog post. There's 8 more links to other related blog posts and concepts that we've already written about that are tangentially related. Maybe there's like an industry landing page that we have for how our product relates to like fintech specifically, and there's a fintech example. So those are the types of internal links, a link to your docs or your help center, or whatever that type of stuff might be. I call those outbound internal links. But with a new piece of content, that's not going to do anything to help that new piece of content get found. That's only going to help once Google knows about that piece of content to find the other stuff that you're linking to, right? The links point that way. The thing that most brands miss and most SEO teams miss is building inbound internal links to new content. So whenever I create a new piece of content for a client and I build all those outbound internal links, I'll crawl and scrape their site and find where are all of the places on our site where we're mentioning this new topic that we're writing about. So for that vet client that I was discussing, I was working on a content brief yesterday that was about kidney failure in cats. Wrote this great piece of content. We have this amazing content brief. We added all of these different internal links to, all of the symptoms that are shown when your cat has kidney failure, like vomiting and diarrhea and all the stuff. So we pushed internal links up to those things. Then I also scraped the site and said, show me everywhere on our existing site where we mentioned kidney failure in cats. And there was like 22 different places on the site of pages that Google already knows about, that are indexed, that have rankings, that get crawled and have traffic, where we can link to that new article. And that just helps improve and speed up the discoverability of that new piece of content. It helps pass authority from all those other pages of Google knows about this one page about your cat is lethargic. One of the reasons could be they have kidney failure. And there's a link that points to the kidney failure article and just really helps like supercharge that new piece of content. It's like I said, like lowest of hanging fruit, takes a little bit of effort to like discover and add the internal links, but like you don't need an engineering team. You don't need all this stuff. And it's crazy how often brands just pump that. You spend $2,000 on a new article and you just publish it to your blog, you tweet it out, you post it on LinkedIn, you move on. It's just crazy that we're not leveraging the internal linking, the mechanism at which Google uses to discover your content. So that's, if there's like one thing that I would say you could do to your website, your blog today is like do an internal link audit and just add as many relevant internal links as possible. Don't stuff them everywhere. They need to be like, useful and relevant in those cases. But it's often totally underutilized.
I was just curious, like how you actually do that. Because when a site gets quite large, there's no human that's going to have everything in their head. Like, oh, this is where that link should link to or whatever. Like, do you just go back to Google and do a search of your own site?
So you can, depending on what CMS you're using, you can just like search in the CMS for a topic or a keyword. For successful sites, so this vet clinic client that I have, all of their content is indexed. So it all exists in Google. So I'll do a site search in Google. So if you go to a Google search and you type in the word site with a semicolon and then your domain name, and you leave a space and then you put in a keyword, either a single keyword or keywords in quotation marks, it'll pull up the entire index that they have of that domain name that contains that keyword. And I'll just manually go through and I'll just scroll through the Google search results and I'll open them all in new tabs. And then I'll just do like a Command F to find, okay, yeah, kidney disease. This is related to cats. And I'll add that one into my list. Some brands that I've worked with before have like automated this process, and like built their own custom plugins into Webflow that automatically adds links and all this kind of stuff. It just kind of depends on how big your site is and where you're at and all those types of things. The more that I work with a client though, like I know all of the content that they have, right? Like whether they have 30 blog posts or they have 500 blog posts, most of the time I know like, hey, yeah, we have a blog post on whatever the symptom is that, a dog is suffering from. And sometimes you miss some, but oftentimes when we're looking at content or even, I'll come across a blog post in some research and I'll send it to the content team and I'll say like, hey, there's 3 missing internal links on this thing, or I'll just go into the CMS and just manually add them.
I guess that goes back to like having a fractional SEO consultant that's like part of the team. You actually start to like have some of that institutional knowledge of like where things are and how they connect.
And cares about the overall strategy more than just, well, I publish 4 articles a month and it's just that. Like, I don't want to just focus on the things that I'm pumping out and producing. It's the overall health of the entire domain. And now it's extending beyond that, like things like G2 Crowd Matter and how's our brand represented on Reddit and other sites like that. So it's a whole ecosystem now versus I'm only working on blog content, and success for me is publishing 6 new blog posts a month, which is very like tactical. The scope is well defined. You're checking boxes and just moving on every month, which isn't all that impactful in most cases.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation was kind of about how SEO takes a little bit of time to kind of spin up that idea of like a flywheel, I guess, before it starts working. So when like a founder or somebody says the SEO feels slow, like what's really going on there?
You hear this a lot lot from SEO practitioners, whether they're a freelancer or fractional or an agency or someone in-house, of like, oh, this is going to take at least 6 to 12 months to see any results. And like bigger, broader SEO programs do take time. Like you can't just flip a switch, and depending on your resources and the site and the competition and all that stuff, like you're not going to see results tomorrow. But in a lot of cases, you can see some impact in the first 30 days. And the real bottleneck that I see is that most teams move too slowly. So they have like decision paralysis, or they just don't action things fast enough. They focus on the wrong work. So that prioritization of like, oh, we need to build this big new thing over here, versus like, if you guys just focused on your internal linking and, fixing your sitemap and, whatever like the basics are, you'd have impact immediately. They focus on these big things, or these things that are just totally unrelated or won't necessarily have impact. Like we need to rewrite all of our title tags. Yeah, title tags are important, but we can have more faster impact if we focused on the stuff that mattered. Or third, they just focus on too many things, so they become unfocused. Like they're super scattered. They're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing a little bit of this, and there's no like cohesion behind the strategy. And with a lot of the brands that I work with, because they're hiring someone fractional, it means they don't have a full team, right? So they have finite resources. So they need to be super focused and prioritized. So they're focused on the right stuff, and they're shipping the things that matter in the right ways that matter. And they're not posting about this topic here and that topic over there, and doing a little bit of schema over there and title tags over here. There's like a rhyme and a reason and a structure and a cadence to the things that they're working on. And that's true outside of SEO and to other disciplines as well. But most of the time it's that, like focused on the wrong, moving too slowly, focused on the wrong stuff, and way too scattered with their approach to doing things.
And then SEO does take some time though, like Google takes a minute to search through things and stuff like that. So if you are doing the right things in the right order, like you said, you should start seeing some results within like a month or two. And then once you kind of get things up and running, is it sort of exponential growth at that point, or what does that look like?
Every site and every industry and every competitive landscape is different. So some sites I work with, we are able to see that compounding growth because we have the systems in place, and we have the frameworks and the supporting teams and the buy-in from leadership and like all of those things where we know what our systems are and we can move fast, and we've proven out a strategy or a certain framework and we can kind of just do it. Whereas some other clients, it's harder. We don't have those same resources. We have this technical debt that we're trying to clean up, and it can be a little bit slower moving. A lot of the times it's understanding what some of the leading indicators are. So maybe we're not seeing demo requests go up or traffic go up, but hey, we're getting more pages indexed. Google's crawling our site more often. That's a really good leading indicator that like what we're doing is happening. We're starting to get some rankings. We're getting impressions in the search. Maybe we're not getting clicks yet, but we went from page 3 to page 2. Like we're starting to see some movement there. We're being cited a little bit more in LLMs. So sometimes, if you're able to flip that switch and find a repeatable framework and something that can scale and compound over time, and there's definitely an inflection point with that kind of stuff, but it can take time to get to that inflection point. Like usually it's like you see a little bit of slow, steady growth. Maybe you get a couple little wins in there. And then ideally you start to see the up and to the right actions start to happen. And, with some of my best clients, it's like every month it's like organic traffic's up 9%. It's up 5%. It's up 7%. And they're just like every month you're just building on top of the month before that you're building. Sometimes you'll have that huge step change, but like that's not necessarily, scalable and sustainable in a lot of cases. The best websites I work on are the ones where you're just getting that like single digit growth month over month over month, and you have a balanced portfolio, and maybe the homepage is down this month, but another section is building on top of that. Rankings and all this stuff are so volatile. Like if you were to dig in and look at it on a bigger site, you'd be shocked at like daily how much rankings move and change. And a lot of the times you just need to zero out and say like, in the macro, are we moving in the right direction? Then you can dig into, are there pages that are suffering or keywords that we've lost that we want to work on, or where are the wins specifically happening, and dig into the weeds. But a lot of the times, like, is the ship moving in the right direction is the way to kind of look at it with a bigger site.
And then I guess it's probably also that the content you're creating is for SEO, but it's also useful in other places. Like you mentioned, even with some of your own content, you're building like a new blog post that answers some questions or it's a change in the industry. Not only is that useful for SEO, but you're also, as the marketer side of your business or sales side of your business, you're taking that article and going to someone specific and saying like, hey, this could be a useful article for you. So there's like other spin-off benefits as well from doing all that.
Totally. There's this guy, he runs an agency. Can't remember the name of the agency, but his name is Ross Simmons. And his whole thing is like distribution. create content once and distribute it forever. And he's a big proponent of the like, too many brands publish a piece of content and post it once on social and move on. And he is like, you need to take that piece. So take this podcast, for example, right? There's going to be an audio form. There's going to be a video form. Maybe you'll post it on Vimeo, maybe on YouTube. Maybe you embed it somewhere in your site. Maybe you take the transcript and you create a blog post that's like key takeaways and whatever. You publish that on LinkedIn. You share it out in all these different places. So the more that you can get more like bang for your buck with the content that you're creating and distribute it on more surfaces, that's how you start to take one piece of content and turn it into 10, right? And that's how you can start to increase your footprint of content. And maybe all of that blows up. Maybe just the LinkedIn post blows up, and maybe it gives you something to then internally link to elsewhere, send out in your newsletter or whatever it might be. So most of the time I would say that we should never write SEO content. We should write content that helps solve the needs or the user's questions or helps them better understand our product or our positioning in some way, with SEO best practices layered in and all of those types of things. There are some cases where it's like, hey, here's an SEO opportunity. Let's create SEO content for it. But I never lead that way with my clients of saying like, here's the SEO content we need to create because it's going to rank and drive traffic. Yeah. That's thinking about solving the needs of the robots, not solving the needs of the people who have credit cards who are going to buy our product. And you need to do both. But it's like don't inverse the two kind of thing.
And that's what Google rewards and is, ever always striving to reward as well. So I think if you play in that camp, you're always going to be on the right side of the law. You've been in the industry for a while. So I'm just curious if there's anything now that you understand that you wish you kind of had earlier in your career.
Activity doesn't always equal impact. When I was earlier in my career, it was like, I need to show that I'm doing a ton of shit all the time and just there's lots of stuff. I'm pumping stuff out. I'm shipping things as much as possible. And like that matters. But as I've worked more in SEO and worked more at like bigger companies too, a lot of the times it's like people don't really care how many things you've shipped. They care about like what's actually working. But I think you kind of need to go through that evolution of like figuring that stuff out. So I think that matters. And then the other thing is like learning how to advocate for myself more. I wasn't great at that early in my career, and I don't think a lot of people are. And it definitely held me back for a little while. Like you need to be at a certain point before you can start to do that a little bit. But I look back even like 6-7 years ago, and thinking like, man, I should have advocated for myself more in that role. But it's all part of the journey to where you come from, where you go, and where you end up. So I have no regrets of the path or the way that I approached anything for sure.
When you say advocate, do you mean like just like going to senior leadership or your direct report or something like that and saying, hey, I can do this, or here are the things that I've done that are awesome? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's like the do things, tell people side of things. There's the like, I deserve a better title and a more money side of things. And then there's the like, yeah, I have this idea, give me resources, and like pitching your like being more confident to like not always necessarily staying directly in your lane of like, hey, I see an opportunity over here that might not fit my perfect job description. And maybe I'm not getting paid for that thing over here, but sometimes you got to go take a swing on that thing and advocate for it because that can show impact or open doors and like all of that kind of stuff.
Is there anything that you're more confident about now than you were a few years ago?
I've suffered from imposter syndrome like my whole career. And I'm like slowly getting over that. I think building and running my own business has really helped me get over that, where I'm like, oh, real companies, like successful companies are paying me thousands of dollars for my brain and my insights and my strategy and my work. And that's really validating versus before when you're working in-house, like, am I good at my job? Am I not good at my job? They hired me, but, I kind of feel gaslit. There's politics and all that kind of stuff. But going out on my own and doing it myself and building a business that is sustainable and I'm making good money and working with really great clients, that's very validating. So definitely way more confident in that. And then like industry wise, I was thinking about this question this morning, like AI is here to stay and it's like only gonna grow and evolve and infiltrate our lives even more everywhere. I remember the first time I used ChatGPT would have been like 3.5 years ago. I remember I was like, oh, here's this cool app. And I was like visiting my sister-in-law and she's got 3 kids. And like I prompted ChatGPT to create like a bedtime story for my nieces and nephews that involved a dog and a soccer game. And I was like, this is incredible. What an amazing thing. And like fast forward 3 years and like what all these skills and projects and MCP servers and all this stuff we have going on today, it's wild, and it's only going to get wilder. And I just hope it's used to solve the biggest problems we have in humanity.
Me too. I mean, one thing that I actually find, like from a business perspective, I guess, quite encouraging is our industry, like animation design, creative industry, I think is quite afraid of LLMs. But when I look at what you do, I would think that it would be so impacted by that space. But then I see your business is growing and you have been able to like carve out a really nice niche within the SEO space. And I'm like, wow, like if LLMs are not extremely encroaching on that space, or at least you're able to still operate, businesses like mine should be less afraid of AI as well, because we add value to the marketing space as well.
You can get Claude to do SEO tasks, right? But does it understand the context of the business and the strategy that goes into it and the experience that I have working with other clients and all of those strategic layer things of how everything ties together the same? Like I've had clients share to me like, hey, I had Claude create this SEO strategy for me and I put all these inputs in and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, this is false. That's garbage. That contradicts this thing and that won't work. So even though you see something like, Claude Design or whatever they called it, and you see some of the output, you're like, oh, wow, that's actually really good quality. Or some of the videos that you see, it's like, it can do some of the task stuff, but I don't think it can fully replicate the human. I think it'll be in most industries and cases, it'll replace some stuff, obviously. But the more skilled craft stuff, I think it's going to be more of a tooling, a thing that we can add, a quiver that we can add to help us become more efficient and improve our workflows and those types of things. But it's scary. Like you see some of the stuff and you're like, oh my God, that's terrifying.
What I've been noticing over the last couple of months is I use it to learn about things that I don't know much about. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of that journey, I'm impressed. And then as I go deeper and I learn more, I start to realize how infantile the things are that it's giving me. But I'm impressed at the beginning because it's allowed me to expand into an area I know nothing about. And then I realize I knew nothing about it. Now I know something about it. And those things that I was impressed by are a little less impressive now. I've learned that lesson a few times. I even have sent some things to Tom, who's my financial controller, and he'll be just like you said, but that is just false. He's like, that's not a real thing. So it's like someone who's got 40 plus years experience in an industry is like, no, none of those things it gave you are useful. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But it tells you with so much confidence.
It's so confident.
That this is the right answer. Yeah. And then you call it out and it's like, you're absolutely right. That was false. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll try again. Yeah. All right. One more. Is there any lesson that keeps resurfacing for you as your work evolves?
Human connection is important. Whether, I've been working remotely since the pandemic hit. Like I have not been back in an office since then, but building connections, whether it's like virtual like this or meeting someone at a coffee shop, which we've done, getting out of the house, I think that's really important. And that just keeps becoming more important. Most of my clients are in the US. So like I haven't met a lot of them. The vet client, I've been with them for 3 years. I just met the CMO and the VP of marketing in November because they opened a location in the West End of Toronto for the first time. And it was like, yeah, that was worth it. Like it's good to be face to face and see the people in real life that I'm working with when I have the opportunity to. And then the other thing is that all of these tools and LLMs, all this stuff, it's increasing the scale at which we can produce stuff, but quality still matters. And we need to balance quality with quantity. And yeah, everyone wants to scale and there's value in that. But we need to build that foundation, those systems first, and validate the things that are going to work before we can start to scale them up. And I just see that just mass produced garbage all over the place. And it's like disheartening.
We'll keep creating good content, hopefully. Yeah, this was super insightful. I learned like a ton. To be honest with you, I was kind of nervous going into this conversation because SEO is something that I know very little about. So I appreciate you sharing as much as you did, because it's like, I'm going to have to listen to this episode over and over a few times just to kind of absorb everything. But thanks for spending the last hour with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks for including me.
And that's our tangent for today. Thanks for listening. If you're still here, you either loved it or you fell asleep with autoplay on. Either way, I'll take it. This show is produced by Cesar Barbosa with original music crafted by Sanctus Audio, mixing by Daruma Audio, and creative and episode support from Kian Nolan and Matt Martell, which is a lot of talent to keep me on track, and it only mostly works. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow the show and share it with someone who cares about marketing, craft, and story, and the messy reality of making great work. Until next time, keep following the tangent. I'm Garris Booth, and Creative Tangent is a podcast by The Booth, the strategic animation practice.